Okay. Right. Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is post-match reaction show time after Liverpool have just shot themselves in the foot three times over against Leicester City to blow a very well-deserved and well-earned 1-0 lead to lose 3-1, drop another 3 points, potentially end the weekend miles outside of the top four, though of course there are plenty more games to be played between now and then. But the headline is that Liverpool fell to bits today. And what's really frustrating is, as I said just now, that lead that we got through Mo Salah was well earned and well deserved. We kept the ball, we kept going at Leicester, looked like we were going to create chances, we looked threatening, we were getting into the box, we had them on the back foot, and when the goal finally came, it really felt like Liverpool had given themselves something to hold on to, and that was the crucial thing. They'd finally come out of that long spell of trying to score a goal and being cut off at every possibility by Leicester, by putting the ball in the back of the net, and they could now look to protect that 1-0 lead. And instead, they capitulated, and they capitulated horribly. And there are so many reasons as to why. Some of them out of our control, some of them very much in our control. So we'll get into them, starting with the ones that were very much Liverpool's fault. The first goal comes from a free kick, which comes from a silly tackle almost by both Thiago and Trent Alexander-Arnold. And it's a thing that's been raised in Thiago's game recently, that his tackling is a little bit wayward. He's been likened to Paul Scholes, which you never really want to happen when your tackling is being compared to other midfielders. You know, he does dive in, he is rash, he often just gets nowhere near the ball, he's very late and he catches players. And listen, when that's in the centre circle, it's kind of fine and in some ways even encouraged. You want someone who's going to get stuck in, set the tempo, let the opposition know you're there, make sure it's a nice, quick, fast-paced, physical game. And if you can see the free kick in the centre circle or the opposition half, then fine, whatever. It's not a huge issue. When you are doing it right on the edge of the box with the very clear and tangible risk of it also being in the box, we don't want that. You know, we had enough of that with Lucas Leiva. That went on for years, him, kicking players' shins about 5 yards away from the edge of the penalty box. We don't need someone else doing it, because what then happens is, first of all, we get the very, very, very long VAR delay, which was a massive pain in the arse as well, and brought out one of the most hilarious lines I think I've ever heard from a commentator, which is Peter Walton, when discussing whether or not it was inside the box, saying, and I think I'm pretty much quoting word for word here, "It's a factual decision, so it's up to Stuart Atwell to decide whether or not it's in and out of the box." So it's not a factual decision, because you're leaving it up to someone to make a decision based on their opinion of what they've seen. If it was a factual decision, you wouldn't even need someone to make a decision. A computer could do it. Thankfully, the decision goes our way. They seem to favour us a little bit there. I think it was very much borderline, although, to be honest, in that situation, when it is borderline, don't bother going to VAR. Just leave it as it is, because that's what they eventually do. You've then, of course, got these shambles of a goal that we concede. Whether or not you think they were right to rule it onside is another matter. Looking at the lines they've drawn, it looks like Firmino's foot, which is the furthest back point, they've drawn the line by the looks of it a little bit further in front, and the t-shirt line for Amati, I believe it is, they draw the line from there, whereas the t-shirt line typically is, there, the end of the t-shirt, and I think that may have made all the difference. But it's a heavy sticking point, and you think, well, to be honest, we're all advocating to either get rid of VAR or massively reduce its impact on the game. So you have to accept that sometimes those borderline decisions won't go your way, and as a result, it's Liverpool's own fault that they concede the goal at the end of the day. The most frustrating thing was it came at the end of a really long, hefty VAR process that, frankly, no one enjoyed. It was really boring, and at the end of the day, if they need that to get the decisions right on the really marginal ones, I'd kind of rather they just occasionally got them wrong, especially when it is that marginal, because it just takes up so much time. It's not entertaining for everyone, and sorry, at the end of the day, Leicester get a goal, which, regardless of whether the VAR had intervened or not, they probably would have done somehow. So they draw it level, and then Liverpool just completely capitulate from there. And it's really frustrating, because I felt like Kabar looked reasonably assured throughout most of his debut. But what was really highlighted with the second Leicester goal is what happens when you throw in a player who isn't used to Liverpool's system. I think any other player who's been playing at Liverpool for a while, Van Dijk, Matip, Gomez, Fabinho, even Dejan Lovren, if he was there, and we know how overprone he was, knows that Alisson's going to come for that. Maybe, I don't know, Alisson, you'd hope, would have shouted for it. Kabak's clearly already locked into that momentum of he thinks he's settled that he's going to make the decision and make the clearance himself. Like any other defender knows Alisson's probably going to come for that, is aware of the shout and leaves it for him, backs off a little bit. But Kabak isn't used to that. He probably played in a very different system at Schalke and therefore thinks it's his responsibility to clear it. Whether you can criticise Alisson and say that he should compensate for Kabak's relative newness and maybe, you know, be a little bit more reluctant and leave it to him to deal with. Whether you want to criticise Kabak for the fact that he took the situation into his own hands when really the onus in our system is on Alisson to deal with those kind of balls forward. Or whether you just want to say, you know what, it's no one's fault because we had to throw Kabak in, and in an ideal world we wouldn't have had to. And that's one of the reasons that I think you can almost pin it on, even though that's the most calamitous goal from a Liverpool perspective. It's probably the one that was least our fault. You know, we can't help that we are chucking in centre halves who've never played a game for Liverpool before and have played in systems that aren't too similar to ours. You know, it's almost no surprise that those kind of issues are going to come up, and it's a bit difficult to deal with them aside from you get Kabak and Alisson on the training pitch and you get them communicating a little bit better. So I'm not really that critical about the second goal. If anything, it's the one I'm least frustrated with. What's really frustrating is that that goal should have been, you know, a consolation. It should have made it 3-1 to Liverpool, and you think, oh, well, you know, that's something that they can clearly work on the training ground, but we did the business at the other end, and the issue is we didn't do the business at the other end. And before I come on to the third goal that we conceded and the very end of the Liverpool capitulation that saw all 3 points slip away, what was really annoying was that we did not capitalise on our dominance earlier on in the game, and it felt like for all the good play we had going on, what we really needed was just a striker who was going to bang the ball in the back of the net. And if you want to look close to home for those kind of decisions, then you maybe want to look at Origi. I know people don't rate him and he's not good enough, but he is still very much, he occupies that role. He wants to be in a threatening position, get on the end of crosses, get on the end of passes, through balls, loose balls and stuff like that, and stick it in the back of the net. He's not too interested in being involved with the build-up play. You could also look at Diogo Jota, who was doing that sort of thing brilliantly for Liverpool before his injury. So listen, hopefully this issue will subside a little bit once he returns in the projected 2 to 3 weeks that it said he's going to be back. But also looking ahead to the summer transfer market as well, I do think we need a little bit of a shake-up going forward. The Mbappe shouts are still there, and fingers crossed, I'm hoping to God we have any chance whatsoever of getting either him or a player of his calibre, because Liverpool do need a bit of a shake-up going forward. They need a finisher in the middle. No disrespect to Bobby Firmino, there is still maybe a place for him in the side playing a bit deeper as a number 10 or something like that, but at the moment, it's just not working with him as the spearhead of the attack, especially when we're up against packed defences, because for all the pressure we had today, we didn't really look that much like scoring. You know, it looked like we were making Leicester uncomfortable. We were getting into threatening positions, but we weren't creating clear-cut chances. We weren't testing Kasper Schmeichel enough, and that is the real issue, that Liverpool have the ball and they're playing well. The performance is still good, but it's coming to nothing because right at the end of the move, there isn't the killer touch and killer presence needed to actually score the goal that the moves all deserve. So it was incredibly frustrating that Liverpool didn't make more of it, and that's why I said that it really felt like we had something to hold on to when Mo Salah scored. We should have been a lot more streetwise and managed the game a lot better once we go 1-0 up and been much more careful, and that's what I'm talking about. Those tackles by Thiago and Trent Alexander-Arnold, they're wild, they're silly, giving away fouls like that on the edge of the box. You shouldn't be doing that when you're 1-0 up. You should be being very, very careful to try and protect your lead, and if that means letting him through and trusting the players behind you, knowing that we're sitting on a 1-0 lead and we should have players in the box behind you to deal with that, then so be it. But lashing out at someone's shins when you've got no chance of getting to the ball is just plain stupid and not what you should be doing if you want to manage a game. And again, I've said a few times in the most recent post-match reaction videos that this season reminds me a lot of early Klopp, the 16-17 season in particular, where the players ran out of steam and they couldn't implement the Jurgen Klopp system properly, and as a result they started losing silly games, including, through perhaps no coincidence, a 3-1 loss at the King Power Stadium in February, I believe it was. So the stars have aligned a little bit there. But another thing we also did in that season, and a little bit after it as well, was we did not manage games properly. We were, at times, we were getting into good positions. You know, think of the Sevilla 3-0 that ended up being a 3-all as being a really key example of this. We sometimes just lost our heads completely, and that's what happened today. You don't concede 3 goals in 8 minutes playing in any manner other than complete disarray, and that's what happened to Liverpool. The third goal, like I said, the second goal didn't frustrate me that much because it's just kind of, you know, what can you do? That happens when you throw a new centre half into an alien system to him. But The third goal is just a complete mess. You know, if you're going to be that far away from Harvey Barnes, it's either because the only reason you can be that far away is because you're playing an offside trap, because you're pushing up the pitch and playing him on offside. If you are going to play him onside, then you've got to be close, you've got to be tight, you've got to put pressure on him. And Ozan Kabak is just in a little bit of a no man's land. He's in neither position that benefits us, and it allows Harvey Barnes pretty much a free shot on goal. And that is the game done and dusted there. You know, if it's 2-1 and we hadn't lost our heads and allowed that third goal to happen, then you still got a chance of salvaging a point, and it's not a good result. You've still blown a lead, and a draw isn't good enough for Liverpool at the moment in a game like this. But at least it gives you a little bit of, you know, momentum, feeling like you managed to claw it back after the game felt like it was slipping away from you. And instead, we fully let it slip away from us, and we threw the game out the window. And listen, those are the reasons that are Liverpool's fault. You know, the game management was very, very poor. Individual errors cost us at very, very key points in the game. You know, the Kabak one for the second goal, fine. You know, it's understandable that there's a miscommunication there. For the third one, that's just poor defending. You know, failing to play a high line, possibly, that kind of thing is just, you know, that's on him. That needs to be sorted out. But there are reasons that weren't Liverpool's fault as well. Like I said, the VAR stuff, you can argue about whether or not you think it's onside or offside with the equaliser. It also delays the game a lot, which can throw your momentum off as well. Liverpool were in a good place before that Leicester equaliser, you know, 1-0 up, finally making their dominance count and stuff like that, and it kind of slows the momentum of the game. You've also got the fact that when James Milner comes off, and it's interesting, you know, does that affect the game in the first place? Jurgen obviously wants Milner on from the start for some reason. He obviously doesn't want Thiago on from the start, and that's always vindicated by the fact that Thiago gives away that very silly foul that leads to the equaliser. So that throws us off tactically, and also, as they said on the commentary, that is the 10th first team player Liverpool have got out injured. Just trying to name them off the top of my head, I can name 5 centre halves. You know, Virgil, Gomez, Matip, Fabinho, Ben Davies as well has now picked up a knock. You've got Keita and Jota on the treatment table. Divock Origi has a knock as well at the moment. There's definitely a couple that I'm missing as well, that will be in and around there. You know, players that aren't available for Liverpool at the moment. So that is not going our way at all. And what's really frustrating is we now look like we're not going to get the bare minimum over the line, which is to get top 4 and get Champions League football next season. What I've been saying over the last couple of months of really bad form is, listen, it hasn't gone our way this season at all. And at some point, we've just kind of had to accept that we aren't going to win the league, and we might come away with no silverware because it has just the stars have aligned for everything to go against us. But what's really frustrating is if we don't get that top 4 position, it then carries on to next season. It makes it more difficult to get players like Mbappe or any top-class forward or top-class backup in any position, centre-halves included as well, over the summer. That suddenly becomes very difficult if you're playing Europa League football. The next season, you've then got to deal with the Thursday-Sunday cycle, which isn't ideal, and also you're not in the Champions League. It then becomes more of a struggle to get back into the top 4, as we've seen before. Once you are out of that elite club at the top of the league, it becomes very difficult to get back into it. It took Liverpool a long time to slog their way into finally getting 4th place again. So we don't want to be putting ourselves in that position where this one absolutely horrible season has long-term ramifications. The ideal result for Liverpool, the best possible scenario now, is we go into next season having been able to completely put this kind of nonsense behind us, to go into next season knowing that we aren't going to be in a position where we are falling apart at the King Power, and we are plummeting down the Premier League table, and we are looking at teams like West Ham and Everton and worrying about whether they're going to finish above us in the league. But at the moment, it's looking like Liverpool are in real serious danger of slipping back down, not into the doldrums. Finishing 6th and 5th is not the doldrums, but essentially undoing all the hard work of the last few years to get us into a position where we were a team that could win European Cups, compete in Europe on a regular basis, and even finally win the Premier League. And that is what is really frustrating. So listen, I'm not sure where Liverpool go from here. As I've said, I think we need a change of style. We need to shake it up. The current system is not working. Although today it did quite well. You know, it put us 1-0 up. The way we approached the game was actually absolutely the right way to go about it. If your finishing isn't good enough, then by all means create as many chances as you can until one of them finally goes in. And listen, the goal was fantastic. Great play from Roberto Firmino. Wonderful finish from Mo Salah. It feels pretty irrelevant now, but it was absolutely fantastic. And that's a good sign as well. We can hold that onto that as a crutch going forward, that Liverpool are still capable of playing brilliantly and being electrifying going forward and scoring fantastic goals that the opposition could do absolutely nothing about. Is telling the way Leicester responded to that goal. They were just completely despondent. They had no idea what they were supposed to do with attacking play like that. So hopefully Liverpool can take that forward. But the worrying thing is, if we keep, losing our heads and capitulating like this, then we are not going to get the points on the board that we need to get that all-important Champions League place. So I'm sorry, it's a miserable note to end the video on. I normally try and be a little bit optimistic, and as I said, the goal is one little ray of light in a massive dark pit of misery. But hopefully you can at least take that with you and look forward to the next few games where, it's a big moment for Liverpool to turn it round. A European tie against Leipzig, big game against Everton next weekend as well. A chance to really switch morale up in the club, and hopefully, fingers crossed, touching wood, whatever superstitions you've got, please, for the love of God, do them. Liverpool can get back on track and get that Champions League place. But until then, that has been all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did somehow enjoy this post-match reaction, then hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter. And I'll be back on Monday with the pre-match content for the Leipzig match. Until then, bye for now.